What's going on, everyone? It's TV, and we're back in Bed Wars for a new pro tips video. This one's going to be a bit of an advanced combat video, meaning if you're new to the game, some of this is going to go over your head, but if you're an experienced player, this video should be pretty interesting for you. As you know, there are lots of animation bundles on Roblox to choose from, and rumor has it that some of these animations give you an advantage in the game, either through extended reach, maybe reduced knockback or extended knockback. So we decided to do some deep testing here. Special thanks to my friend ABC Dino, who helped out for several hours while we went through animation bundle by animation bundle. It took us forever. Now, of course, you've probably heard of Dino. He's a well-known player in the Bed Wars community and is also in my clan, so make sure to check out his YouTube channel in the description below and give him a sub, and maybe you'll learn a few things from him. Now, this video did take a while to make, so if you could do me a huge solid and hit that subscribe button and like button if you haven't already. Otherwise, just stare into this for a moment and you're going to do it for me anyway. Now, quick disclaimer, this game's combat has changed dozens of times since release, okay? So most of this information should be valid for a while, but considering they keep changing mechanics in the game and combat, some of it may change by the time you watch this in the future. So if you're watching this way in the future, months later, maybe it's a little different, but sometimes, I get comments from people on really old videos like, TV, there's no way, there's so many better things now. Why did you forget to include this or that? And I'm like, it wasn't available at the time. So, but just make sure you check the date of this video. Now, one thing that really confused us during our initial tests, we were really stupid by the fact that there's such inconsistent knockback. Like when we were hitting each other, it was inconsistent. We tried to see if we can reproduce it. We tried to see if it was like based on the number of times you hit someone, your distance, where you hit them. We tried so many different things. We thought maybe, the power, like knockback power, was just RNG based, basically meaning randomized, right? So every now and then you'll get more intense knockback versus the other time you hit them. So I decided to message my friend Snicktrix, who is one of the main developers and owners of the game, and he explained to me that the variance we see is not RNG, but in fact has something to do with Roblox's humanoids and their acceleration. So I basically said, okay, thanks, that that's what I thought it was.
Totally makes sense to me.
But all joking aside, I think it has something to do with the animation of the character in its complexity and style. And that's based on my experience with some of these tests, is that some of the less frequent animations, like the ones that don't move much, are pretty consistent, whereas the ones that have a lot of animation and movement to them are a little bit more inconsistent. This meant that during our tests, though, we needed to run multiple tests to get an idea of the actual range for an animation's knockback. You'll see that in a little bit. The other thing we noticed during our first test is that something that was kind of alarming that I hadn't noticed before, and that's with the reach. So if you don't know what reach is, it basically means the distance before you can actually hit someone, okay? So that's the reach that you have with your sword to be able to hit someone else. Now, if you're watching this video, you should probably already know that, but for those of you that have been following this channel for some time, I did make a video showing the reach differences between clicking on a player with your crosshair versus not clicking on them with the crosshair, okay? Or even cursor. So basically, there's a huge difference if you don't have your cursor or crosshair on someone versus not. Now, in that video, third person and first person were pretty much identical, but this time, what we're finding with these new tests is that we found that the first person view will actually give you an extra block reach. And that is 4.5 blocks reach when hitting others compared to 3.5 blocks distance for hitting others in third person view. So essentially what that means is first person's better. At least in the tests for this, we found that first person was better. Now you should be seeing those clips right now. And then I'm clicking on the person and I can only get 3.5 blocks away distance while I'm clicking on them. Now in first person, we're able to reach just one more block away. And that's just something that is different from that last video. If you watch that video, it's a little different now. Now, I know you really want me to jump straight into those animations and our results for our test, but before I do, during our test, we noticed you can actually double hit players at times with the sword in under a second. That's right, you heard me right. 2 hits in under a second. And what we found is you need to be close enough to them and you need to be clicking really fast, like really fast, which proves out that auto clicking is going to have a big advantage. I couldn't get it to work at about like average of 8 CPS or clicks per second. I couldn't get it to work to do the double hit, but I did notice it when I tried the auto clicker. The other thing we noticed is that jumping a lot will actually trigger anti-cheat. One thing to note on that is I did mention it to the devs, so they may make some adjustments to it, but if you're in the anti-cheat, it can actually trigger an explosive knockback that can throw you off the map. In this case, I got yeeted while standing still when Dino was hitting me. He hit me a ton. I was in anti-cheat, then I stopped and I started typing, and you'll see me just get yeeted off the side of the cliff. I had no idea what happened. He wasn't even near me. He didn't even hit me. I just launched. And that's how crazy anti-cheat is. It's almost like it queues it up. It's like a lag. It's really weird that it's actually storing all that energy and then it's exploding your character with it. What we notice for that is that it happens most often while jumping. If you are jumping a lot, especially if you're like me, you like to jump a lot while you're in combat, you are more likely to trigger anti-cheat than you would not jumping. And that's why you see a lot of players, they complain because they got anti-cheated. What happens is your character will start slowing down and they look like they're like walking, and that's because you're in the anti-cheat. It's almost like lag. It's almost like artificial lag, right? and then you get like destroyed out the map. That's how you see people getting launched, is because they're jumping so much while getting hit, and then they just get launched. So to avoid that, don't jump a lot. Try not to jump so much, but if you're jumping a lot, maybe just reduce the amount you jumped. Only jump when you need to. And then we jumped over to the vampire animation, which had decent and average knockback. Like, decent meaning a little bit more, but it was just regular knockback. Again, we tested 10 hits on each of these animations several times, though what I'm showing you here is going to be a short clip of that. The hitbox was also, when I say hitbox, it's really about like the ease of targeting, because it's not just about the hitbox, it's also about how the animation looks, which can actually make it a little bit harder to understand where they're going or moving. In this case, it was also average and it wasn't really anything special, so he was still able to hit me with this animation pretty easily. After that, we tried the cartoony animation bundle, and it had a bit more knockback than the vampire and the default one, but nothing crazy. I did notice I got anti-cheated a lot more with this animation for some reason, and it could have been unrelated. It could have just been the fact that I was jumping a lot, but it's just something I wanted to make note of in case you experience a lot of anti-cheat. Maybe try a different one. But the next one that was pretty interesting was the Astronaut animation, which was with our knockback tests. We noticed major knockback on this one, which could actually be an advantage depending on how you look at knockback. As you saw with the new anti-knockback enchantment, not getting knocked back can actually harm you more than help, because you can't get away. You're basically running away, and when you're being chased by someone and they push you forward after hitting, it can actually help you escape, right? I don't know, I'm sure you've seen that, where you get hit and you're trying to run away from them, you get hit again, and it launches you out of their reach. Well, in this case, if you have anti-knockback or very short knockback, it's the opposite effect. They can reach you very easily. So again, if you're being chased by someone and an enemy hits you and boosts you toward the enemy, you have a greater chance of that knockback actually helping you reach that person you're chasing. But in the case of rushes, getting knocked off the side of the cliff isn't so great, right? So you don't really want to have like really high knockback on a kit if you're trying to break a bed, or if you're trying to stay on maybe a bridge or something. But it really depends on the situation. And out of all of our tests, this animation bundle had the most of the knockback, sending me straight to the end of the test area each time. So this is the maximum that we experienced during all our tests. Astronaut took the crown. The hitting was average, meaning it wasn't really that hard to hit. Next, we did the Leviathon animation, which we've all heard has some advantages, right? So I can tell you that this is known for a bit of added reach, which we didn't really get into crazy tests on, but the little testing that we did for reach, I believe it does give you a tiny bit more reach, 1/5 of reach of a block at most. It really wasn't significant at all. When you jump and swing your sword, your avatar does lean forward a little bit more, at least rotate more than an average animation, or a default animation that goes straight up. And it's much like a ninja animation. It does not appear to give you a full block of additional reach though. So there's nothing like huge advantage here, but even those tiny little, advantages can add up over time. So if you really think it helps, then maybe it's more perception or a placebo, or it could even be a placebo effect. Now with the Leviathan, knockback was average and the hitbox was average. Again, this one was good for that tilted lean attacks with the sword. Other than that, it was pretty average. Next up was an interesting one, which was the Werewolf animation bundle. This one had a very reduced knockback by far and was the opposite of the Astronaut animation, which basically means we ran multiple tests and it came up as one of the least knockbacks, at least out of all the animations. The hitting was average, so it was pretty easy to hit like, any others. But what it was crazy is that you don't get knocked back that far. So if you're looking for a good bed breaking animation bundle, this would probably be it, at least from our tests. So we also tested the night animation, which was nothing special, all average all around. Mage was also pretty average, a little bit less knockback, and Dino did struggle on this one though to hit it out a couple times. The jump just looks a little bit strange, so I think he just had some issues tracking it because the jump is a little weird. It's kind of almost like a dolphin. It's weird. It's like a dolphin animation. With the Bubbly animation, we noticed a bit more knockback, and it seemed like he was hitting me more on this one though than the others, so it was almost like it was easier to hit than the others. With the zombie animation, we saw average knockback, and it was much like the Mage animation in that it was a little bit more difficult for him to track and hit me. It kind of has a similar animation for jumping to the Mage. With the robot animation bundle, we saw reduced knockback, almost like the Werewolf bundle, but a little bit more than that. So it wasn't quite as low as the Werewolf, but just a little bit more than that. Average hits for tracking as well, so it was pretty easy to hit him. The stylish animation was also similar to the robot animation and the Werewolf with reduced knockback. Average hits were taken as well, so it wasn't that hard for him to hit me. Next was the old school animation bundle, and I can say it was average, though a bit reduced. So hitting seemed to be a bit easier as well. So I don't know if that's that's a thing, or if you just didn't, maybe it was more familiar. It could be. A lot of these also have to do with familiarity, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Next up with the toy animation, we heard a lot about this one. Some were saying the toy animation had some advantages. In our test, the knockback was pretty consistent and average. The ease of hitting was also average. I wouldn't say there was anything special about this one. I think a lot of it just comes down to preference. If you really like the look of it, then great. Now with the ninja animation, this one's pretty infamous for being a huge advantage, and I think part of it is just an illusion that you're running way faster than others. Like when you see this thing heading towards you, it makes them look like they're running really, really fast, like they're faster than you. So I think there's a little bit of that just kind of illusion to it that gives you that perception that it's running faster than you. The lean also makes it feel like maybe it has more reach. I can't really tell if it does. I think it kind of does because it leans so far forward that you can't really help but think it does. The other thing we noticed about this animation is that the variance was huge with the knockback compared to others. Both very short and far. So likely due to the animation style, because there's a lot going on with the animation. It's moving a lot. So it, is also a little bit harder to hit while jumping. So if you're looking for, a pretty decent animation kit or bundle, this one might be it because it has so much variation. It has, a sense of faster. It feels a little harder to hit when it's jumping. And there might be a little bit of that lean reach that we're, but we can't really see that. We didn't really see that in our test. Just by looking at it and by just, swinging and such, you can kind of see that it's definitely a little bit more forward than the others. Next with the pirate animation, it was all around average. Though notice a few less hits in the midair. That means it might have been a little bit harder for him to hit, but you can't really tell. Then we have the superhero animations, and I noticed the most consistent knockback out of all of them in that we got knocked back pretty much almost to the same spot every time, and that's likely because the idle animation is so still. It's almost like you barely have any kind of movement other than a little bit of slight breathing of the idle animation, and the hits themselves, like when you're jumping around and kind of avoiding them, were pretty average. But that idle animation, I think because it's so still, you're gonna pretty much have consistent knockback, which is kind of what I would like in my opinion. But again, that's only if you're just like idle. So again, we are doing our measurements on knockback purely on the idle animations. Knockback, based on movement and run speed is going to be a little different, obviously. But if you're just kind of standing still, like not moving while you're fighting someone, that would be the one to go for. Next with the elder animation, this one was really surprising at how far this kit really leans. I never thought it would lean that much, but it's much like the ninja animation as well as the Leviathons, although it's way better and more angled than the Leviathan. If that's what you're really looking for, is that lean. The knockback on this one was pretty average as well, as was the ease of hitting it. So it's nothing special for those, but if you're looking for something that leans a lot, elder animation really does it. And finally with the Rthro animation, we found it to be a bit more further KB at first. Then it averaged out with some reduced hits taken, likely because the jump animation brings the knees up more. It's probably a little harder for him to recognize or see or track. So, who knows? That could just be based on, that could be subjective or relative to his skills and what he can hit. Again, he's an above average player. He's going to be able to hit most anything. Speaking of, we do need to remember that many players are trained to see the same animations. So the more familiar the animation is with you, it's going to be easier for you to hit. But when you see some weird animations coming in with jumps and such, it can sometimes really throw you off a bit. So now with all of these tests, we can of course try different combinations of run animations, jump animations, and idle animations to optimize if you really wanted to. Bedwars doesn't really appear to use the walk animation. It instead uses the run animation. So all you got to do is set your run animation, your idle animation, your jump animations. And of course you could even get, start geeking out with like the fall animations. But if you really like this video and you want to see some more videos like this one, I might be able to show you some of the fall animations on all these and see how it affects other things like balloons and other types of movements, maybe for a follow-up video. So I did try some of these combinations out inside some matches, but I didn't really notice a huge difference, though you may find it more apparent in like a 1v1 or solos, and it's really just between you and another player versus a group of players. Ultimately, what I found though to be supreme in PvP is the ability to circle a player, get out of their view, and cause them to lose track of you while you're getting those extra hits on them. Whether you're above them, above blocks, or behind them, just get those extra hits on them, and that's really going to be king over any of these animations that I'm showing you. So it's not like any of these things are going to make you like suddenly the best player in the world over others, but it may give you a slight advantage or help you, even if it's a placebo. If you like these kinds of videos on combat, let me know in the comments below, and if this one gets enough positive feedback, I'll start digging into some various avatar bundles, attachments, and skins, and see how they really affect gameplay and physics in the game, and in some cases hitboxes. So some things can actually make it a little harder for you to hit. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
For 2 years straight to the face. Champagne belly bubble still won't go away. Last year my best man hit a stain with bad face. Now he's got a hell behind the water's cold case. I wake up with pain sometime and never go away. Wonder why I bow down to my knees when I pray. In my city gritty, gotta keep it on your waist, or you might be a victim, they'll find you DOA. I can't lie. I've really been addicted to you. All of my attention I've been giving to you. Caught up in my feelings.